Lesson 81, Scales, from Learn Violin Fast, Book 1. Now, we've had a previous lesson where we played the G, D, and A scales. So we know how to play the scales, we know how they sound, but now we're going to learn what makes them sound and what makes a scale a scale. All right, so you're going to review sections 27, 28, where you learned how to play G, D, and A scales, but we didn't learn why. All right, if you recall, a scale has 8 consecutive notes that start and end with the same note, right? So what makes a scale sound like a scale? We're going to learn that in just a little bit. And reminder that the first note of a scale is also known as its tonic. So D of a D scale is its tonic. Question, is C the tonic of D scale? The answer is no, right? C will be part of the D scale or C sharp, but it's not going to be the tonic. So whatever scale you're playing, tonic is the first note and it names that particular scale. So a major scale must follow the following pattern of whole and half steps. And the pattern is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. The way music is set up, there are uneven whole and half steps between the 7 core notes. When you start a scale from any other note than C, we need to alter certain notes with sharps and flats. That's why we have different key signatures in scales, and they have different number of sharps and flats. It is to make the pattern of whole and half steps work. Scales and keys apply sharps and flats to all notes within the note name. In G major, all Fs become sharps. Instead of marking all Fs as sharps individually, we apply the sharp at the beginning of the staff. So if you are familiar with the piano keyboard, you'll notice that there's a bunch of white keys. So it's basically white key, white key, white key. There's all white keys, but the pattern of black keys is different. You'll notice that it has 2 black keys, then 3 black keys, 2 black keys, 3 black keys. If you've never seen a piano or a keyboard, just Google piano keyboard diagram or piano keyboard, and you'll notice that there's a bunch of white keys that are all in order, and then there's black keys at the top that has a pattern. And what you'll notice is that there's 2 black keys, and then there's no black key in between 2 white keys, and then again there's 3 black keys, and again no black key in between white keys. So the white key on the keyboard gets a letter, right? So A through G, and then it repeats back, same as in the violin. And the black keys means that the distance between those white keys, let's say C and D, is a whole step, and the black key is how we would make the half step. So any 2 adjacent notes on the keyboard, white to black if there's a black, or white to white if there is no black key, is a half step, right? And the reason for there's 2 whole steps and then 3 whole steps with half steps in between is to make it uneven. If we all had even notes of whole and half steps, we wouldn't be able to tell of which part of the scale we are. So the reason for unevenness in whole and half steps, right, is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, right? 2 black keys, white key for half step, 3 black keys, white key again for half step, is so that we can know which part of the scale we're in. If we hear 2 whole steps and then a half step, we know we're near the tonic. If we hear 3 whole steps, we know we're at the top part of the major scale. So remember, a scale is 8 consecutive notes. The first note of the scale is the tonic, and it names the scale. So an F scale, the tonic is F, and it must start and end with F. The reason which have different key signatures, G major is different from D major, is different from A flat major, is when we start with notes other than C, we must add sharps and flats to make the pattern of whole steps work. And what is the pattern to make a whole step major scale? The whole step and half the pattern to make a major scale is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. And so I'm going to play the D scale, and I'm going to talk through the whole and half step. So D, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So all major scales have the same pattern of whole and half steps, but when we start with different notes, we have to adjust and we have to alter some notes with sharps and flats. All right, so an easy way to remember your sharps and flats is G major has 1 sharp, D major has 2 sharps, A major has 3 sharps, and E major has 4 sharps or 4 note alterations. And within the key, we'll put those notes at the beginning of the staff, so every note that has that letter will have that sharp or flat applied to it. I hope this isn't too confusing. If it doesn't quite make sense yet, don't worry about it. This is pretty technical and you don't actually need to know this to figure out how to play your music, but it will be helpful for you to know how scales and how the theory of music notation works. I'll see you next lesson when we get to play through all these scales. Thanks for watching. See you next lesson.